Welcome to the first ever patient speaker webinar sponsored by Strongbridge Biopharma. My name is Nita Sharma, and I lead the patient advocacy and public policy group here at Strongbridge. It is my extreme honor to be presenting to you Ride for Rare Diseases Up Close with Gabe and Emily Low. Welcome, Emily. Welcome, Gabe.
Thank you.
Thanks. So today we're going to have this unique opportunity to meet a mother and son who are just dynamic beyond belief. Their stories captivated us from the first time we heard it, and they both bring an individual and family aspect to this rare disorder. And we're going to just have an open dialogue about what periodic paralysis meant to them, how they've overcome their own obstacles, and what Ride for Rare Diseases is all about. With that, Gabe, why don't you give those that may not know what periodic paralysis is a background about the disease state?
Sure. So periodic paralysis is a rare genetic condition that can cause episodes of paralysis and weakness. It's rare, and there are approximately 5,000 diagnosed cases in the U.S. However, that number seems to be underestimated because diagnosis can take up to 20 years or more. So there are a lot of suspected undiagnosed patients out there.
So you mentioned 2 decades, over 20 years. That's very much in line with what your mother, Emily, experienced. So Emily, let's talk a little bit about your road to diagnosis and your journey as a patient of periodic paralysis. At what age were you when you started experiencing symptoms? Do you believe you started experiencing symptoms?
Yeah, well, you know, it's hard to say. I think I was a very healthy, sickly child. I, on and off, had a variety of different kinds of symptoms that may or may not have been attributed to periodic paralysis. So, you know, looking back, it's hard to say what was related to periodic paralysis and what wasn't, since we didn't know what it was back then. But there are certain things that I think probably were, looking back. There's one episode that I can think of when I was probably 11 or 12. I went hiking, and it was cold outside. I remember hiking for quite some time and then going up a mountain and back down. And when I got to the bottom, I sat down, and I don't remember exactly how long I was there, but I just didn't get back up. And the people that were there on the hiking trip with me, it wasn't my family. I was sort of with a group of other teenagers on an overnight or 2-day backpacking trip. And they had thought I got a concussion or something because I just never got up from that trip. Or eventually somebody found me, and they ended up thinking, well, it must have been hypothermia because I hadn't hit my head or anything like that. Because eventually I ended up falling asleep. So that's a time that I remember just sitting down and not getting back up. But to me, that sort of thing was normal, so it never scared me. I think that there are lots of times when I was moving, and that was fine. When I sat down, sometimes I'd sit down and I just wouldn't get back up, and that was normal to me too. So it's hard to say what was, because what was normal for me was normal for me, and I didn't know what was weird. But at that time, people were really worried and concerned.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's one thing. One example. There are lots of other times with friends that, you know, people would try to tell me, okay, it's time to go, and I don't know. I think it's taken me a long time now to learn the difference between being tired and being weak, and what's normal and what's not normal. And it's hard to sort of tease out until symptoms became so severe that it was very obvious that it was a neuromuscular disorder. The the journey to diagnosis was really difficult because it was hard to articulate exactly what was wrong. Having grown up sort of not recognizing that people's bodies sometimes are stronger and sometimes are weaker, I just thought I was tired.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, how long was it until you actually got an accurate diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like having problems with my legs definitely when I was an early teen and saying my legs hurt and I don't want to walk and things like that on and off. And nobody ever really knowing what was going on or what to do about it. So I don't know if I count that time from when I was young, because then there were other times when I was very, very strong as a young person, middle school, high school. So I really start the time of looking for a diagnosis as from maybe when I was more like 18 instead of from when I was maybe 11, from when I remember times like that hiking trip. So from 18 to 29, that was 10 years of really, truly going to doctors and trying to figure out what was wrong, because that's when it really started to impact my life in a way that I couldn't do the things I wanted to do, and I had to start quitting things in a way before it impacted my life, and I always did things differently than my friends, and I knew something was different about me, but I didn't have to quit so much before that.
And were you genetically tested?
Well, yeah, I was genetically tested, but only after years and years and years and years and years of trying to figure out what was wrong. But once I finally was able to pin down the possible diagnosis, and then a couple years after that, and having the diagnosis sort of given and taken away and given back and taken away, finally was I sort of allowed to be given the chance to get genetic testing. And then it turns out that while I'm still clinically positive and have all of the symptoms and respond positively to medication, we aren't genetically positive.
So genetically negative, but clinically positive. Understood.
Right. Yeah.
And similar to Gabriel, you also have this. Clearly, his genes come from you and Adam, but you also were an extremely successful athlete in your youth and your teenage years. Do you want to give us a little description about that?
Yeah. So like I said, I would just keep going and keep moving, and that was the way that I think I dealt with it when I was younger. I found that if I moved things. So I exercised a lot, and both my parents were very active. So I really enjoyed biking. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to do. I love to ride my bike. So I skied and I biked, and I liked to ride my bike so much that one of the first bike races I was in, I ended up winning and eventually became a national champion.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know what to say about that, except that I just really love to ride. And I think just always moving and always riding was really helpful. But I had to train my own way. Like I couldn't follow anybody else's plan much, or I found that there were problems for me. I had to really listen to my body. And that was different than other people. Not that coaches weren't helpful, but I found that I had to kind of pay more attention to what I needed to do than maybe other folks. Yeah. But eventually, after my first national championship and after my second national championship, at both times at Worlds, things didn't go well. And after the second one, I found that I just couldn't go, and my legs just didn't work, and I didn't know why, and I couldn't do anything about it. And I knew that something was just wrong. And that was an example of when I said I just had to quit. I just had to quit. My legs just wouldn't work. And that I knew something was wrong then, and I didn't know what it was. So that was one of the...
Sorry. My apologies. You see, went many years not knowing, and then finally were diagnosed. What was your experience with getting treatments or treatments that worked for you?
You know, it took a while to really figure out the best treatment. What was more exciting than getting treatment was finding out what it was, and finding out that I wasn't just crazy, because not that we're not all a little crazy, I suppose, but there are so many times when I thought it was maybe just in my head because I was told that a lot. And I was told that I was just stressed out or just another tired mom. And so finding out that there was something wrong, and then finding out that there was treatment, but also finding a community of people that had similar symptoms that I could relate to, all of that really made a difference. Like, I remember the first time that I logged into a listserv and found a group of people that had similar symptoms, and the first time that I read a list of symptoms online that matched what I had experienced in my life, that equals or maybe exceeds the experience of having medication and lifestyle management that worked. Because the lifestyle and medication management, that takes a while to get figured out. But talking to somebody who said, you know, it's going to take a while to get it figured out, and you're going to be able to walk the dog someday. And yeah, that just makes me start to cry, because thinking about feeling like I'm never going to be able to walk the dog again, and wondering if, you know, my kids are going to be able to walk the dog ever, that, yeah, hearing somebody else say, I've been through this journey before and you're going to make it through too, that part is, that it really inspired the hope to keep going, you know.
Sure. And currently, how are you managing your condition?
Yeah, so I guess my experience was that it took a while with trying a variety of medications to sort out exactly what was going to work. And then the same thing worked for, yeah, almost 10 years, but eventually it kind of, it didn't work. What's it called? I guess it didn't work as well. Yeah. And so then with the new, I guess there is new medication available, and I am lucky enough that that medication works for me. So yeah, my experience has been that with Kaveyis available now, I have been able to like go back to work, and I sometimes am able to ride my bike. I haven't lately because I've been too busy, but in some ways being busy is also an indicator that things are going pretty well.
So as just having known, you know, for the last couple of months, and as well as Gabe and Adam, one of the things that it's clear to your dedication to your family. And, you know, I know your diagnosis somewhat later in life helped aid an earlier diagnosis for Gabriel. Can you talk about what that was about, and that Gabe's diagnostic journey, because he was rather young versus being a later adolescent. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so while it was really painful, sometimes physically for me, and there were a lot of ups and downs, once I had a more or less solid diagnosis, we had one family physician, and the family physician realized that Gabriel also had similar symptoms. And so he suggested that when Gabriel had what appeared to be an episode of weakness, that we should bring him into the clinic and I guess, test him out to see if potassium helped him, and do a blood draw to see if he was low, and then to see if potassium helped. And so the time that he ended up having weakness, it was really cold that day. He ended up having like a bunch of salty food. He had hot dogs and a bunch of cake. I think it was a birthday party, and he did get weak, and we brought him into the emergency room at our small clinic. And I think that it wasn't our regular physician who was there. And I think people were wondering if maybe he was little, and they're wondering if maybe he had been around when I was so sick all his life, really, and wondering if maybe he was just copying me. And so the physician kind of like tried to sort of stand him up on the bench, and instead of being able to stand up, he just started to fall right down, and I think would have just like broken his face on the floor had the doctor not caught him. And he said, "Oh, well, I guess, this is serious. He's not just copying. This is real." And so they did the blood draw, and they gave him the potassium supplementation, and they did that. He had the diagnosis right then and there. And
how old was he?
It was so easy, and the whole clinical picture fit, and it was, it was for my kids that I went through the whole process that I went through, and I was so glad that it was so easy and quick for him.
And at what age was he when he was diagnosed?
So he was 6.
Okay. Now, Gabe, we talked about this a lot, and you say that you don't necessarily always remember being sick.
Yeah. No, as a kid, I think the most I remember about that story you just told was in a hospital bed laying down. And that's pretty much it. And I don't really remember have any distinct memories of me not being able to get up, like being paralyzed. And I think thinking back now, I can recognize a few instances where I probably was having a paralysis or a weakness episode. I remember one time where I was in Little League baseball, and my mom would always tell me, "Gabe, don't eat the sugar gum. The sugar gum is bad for you." But as a 8-year-old boy in the dugout, everyone's chewing this gum. How are you not going to? So I was actually the pitcher for our little baseball team, and I remember eating gum and then walking out and feeling really weird. And I walked with my hips out, and I tried to throw the ball, and the ball didn't go as far, even to home base. And everyone said, "What happened, Gabe?" And I didn't know. And later my mom told me, "See, I told you not to eat that gum." And at the time, as a kid, you don't realize that something is wrong with you. But now looking back, it's easier to recognize, like you said, Mama, that looking back, you can kind of pick out those instances. But growing up since then, I think really due to my mom's really insistence and really hard work helping me manage my condition as a kid, made it so I really felt normal. I didn't feel very weird. And thinking back, it's hard to remember times where I had those experiences of paralysis and things like that. As a little kid, they'd ask me, what are you drinking? I drink potassium bicarbonate drinks. I drink fizzies, call them. And the kids would ask, and I'd say proudly, I have hypokalemic periodic paralysis. And I talk about that, but kind of almost in a, like, look what I have. I'm different. I'm cool. But not in a way that really sunk in. And after that, growing up more into my middle school years, I don't remember any distinct times, or I didn't feel them then, that I had this disease, this condition. And again, looking back, I can pick out, there was some correlation between periodic paralysis and that I always felt bad on Halloween or the day after Halloween, but it never sunk in then. And I never really understood what was affecting me and who I was, I think. And at the same time as I was learning more, as I was going through adolescence, I started becoming really active, similar to my mom. I played soccer, and I started judo, and I was like dancing, doing all sorts of activities, a really active kid. And I would not ever really notice any paralysis happening. And it almost seemed like it wasn't there. I forgot about it. And this continued, and I started doing triathlons, and I fell in love with triathlons. That's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And still, I never really noticed myself getting weak or having symptoms. And it was all fine. And I almost forgot about periodic paralysis and forgot it was there until I got an attack, basically, until in March of this year, March of 2018, I did the Lava Man Triathlon, which was an Olympic distance triathlon. It's the longest triathlon I had ever done. And when I went into this, I had trained I was ready, but in my, I guess, almost arrogance, I had not prepared any potassium for myself. And even though I knew I knew technically that I had this, I was saying, I've never had to do that before. This is longer, but I'll be fine. And I was wrong. Basically, I started the race, and towards the end, I started to fall into an episode. My legs felt really heavy when I was running, and even on the bike, I noticed something. And I thought back to the stories my mom had told me of her world championships when her legs just wouldn't go like they normally would. And I realized I was having the same experience. And I going through the race, I just started getting less strong, not performing as well, until towards the end, I could barely lift my legs up. My feet felt like stones. They were so heavy. And I came over, I finally got to the finish line. I saw it, and I flung myself over and just collapsed right there. And the medics found it and said, he has fatigue, he's too hot, so let's take him and put ice all over him and get him some sugar and sodium electrolytes to bring him back. And I remember thinking that, wait, no, I have this rare muscular condition called periodic paralysis, and I need to have more potassium. I'm low on potassium. I couldn't really say it. I wasn't working. And that was when it really hit me that, wow, I have this condition that I hadn't really realized. It hadn't really set in. And ever since then, I've understood that periodic paralysis is really a part of me, and it's who I am. Ever since that moment where I was in pretty much total paralysis, it hit me. And after that, I kept talking more with my mom and hearing her stories and thinking how incredibly strong she is to have done all that without treatment. And that's just incredible.
So what was I would like to mention one major point that Gabe is not sharing. Despite having an attack and despite going through all those hardships during the Lava Man race, he still finished 11th overall, and he still finished second in his age category, which in itself is just a miracle, and it shows a testament to who he is as an individual. But I thought I'd add that part in as well. So moving on forward, so that was March of 2018, and you and I first connected in May of this year when you had this idea of Ride for Rare Diseases. What motivated you to want to do Ride for Rare Diseases?
Yeah, so Ride for Rare Diseases came about after my kind of revelation I had after the Lava Man, and the realization that periodic paralysis is a part of me and it's who I am. And that hit me as one thing, that I have this disease. But then also how incredibly lucky I have been in my life to have a diagnosis from so young, and also have a mom who worked so hard to help me manage my condition as a child and through my life, so I didn't have to experience things like she did. And talking to her more and hearing more of her stories of growing up, it really struck me, and I couldn't help but feeling an almost obligation. I had a duty to use the opportunities I've been given with my diagnosis and with my incredibly lucky life where I'm active and doing all these great things with a rare disease, with periodic paralysis. I want to use that opportunity from my diagnosis to go and help other people who aren't as lucky. And that's where Ride for Rare Diseases just popped into my head, I guess. And Ride for Rare Diseases is the ride, a cross-country bike ride from Seattle, Washington, all the way to Cleveland, Ohio. And we're ending in Cleveland because that is where the 2018 USA Triathlon Age Group National Championships is being held. And that's what I qualified for through my Lava Man. And I think right after the Lava Man, I said, how am I going to get to Cleveland? And why don't I bike there and try to start a campaign, an awareness campaign through it.
Thanks, Gabe. So Emily, there's a lot of ambition with Gabe, and he's loves talking to people, and you and Adam have helped enable that. But what has empowered you to want to share your personal journey? I know it's been a very private event for most of your life, but what about this time, this day, this awareness campaign has made you want to share your journey?
The fact that Gabriel decided to do this, I guess it's kind of come full circle, where I remember being, laying on the floor in the house and baby Gabriel, toddling away, and I wasn't able to get up and chase after him because I was laying there so weak I couldn't move. And so everything I, did the next time I tried to move or get to the next doctor's appointment was for him, for my kids. Right. And then ever after that, for the next 10 years, trying to figure out what was wrong. Trying to show him, once it turns out that he had the same thing, that you can live with this condition and trying to lead a normal life. So now I feel like he's kind of come back and done the same thing to me. Like, it's not just about leading a normal life, but it's also about advocating and sharing and giving back. And so I guess we'll just keep maybe pushing each other in this way. I don't know. It's a little overwhelming, and this is the first time that I've been public in a very one-on-one sense about my story, and I share with people when it comes up in conversation in terms of being an advocate for people with invisible illness and with chronic disease, and about the importance of sharing awareness. But I have never shared my story in a public forum like this before. If it were not for him, I don't think that I would. And to tell you the truth, I have not cried this much in a long time.
Happy tears.
Yeah.
So Gabe, you've been doing a ride for rare diseases now for about 6 weeks, right?
7
7 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so almost the 8-week mark. So what have been some of your favorite memories so far on this journey?
Oh, well, riding my bike has, of course, been just awesome. I, like my mom, just love to ride my bike, and riding across the country has been the most incredible thing. But even more incredible than the bike ride and the scenery and all that has been meeting with patients and hearing their stories and sharing mine. Those moments where I've talked to other individuals who are going through the same thing that maybe not I've gone through, but that my mom has gone through. It has been so inspiring. It really has. And those stories I share, and when they tell me, Gabe, what you're doing is so incredible and so meaningful, and thank you so much. it's beautiful. It's definitely the highlights of my trip are those experiences. They're just incredible.
You've expressed a few times that cycling's the easiest part of this ride for rare diseases.
Oh yeah.
But what has been the most difficult thing you've experienced during ride for rare diseases?
So the most difficult, right? Like cycling, even going up the Rockies, it's all just awesome. But the hardest, well, I have to say that sometimes when I'm talking to fellow patients, as much as it is so incredible, it's also hard for me because I'm speaking to these people who perhaps are in wheelchairs or who have spent weeks or months in the hospital because of their conditions. And I'm here with their same condition, and I'm riding my bike across the country, and they can't do that. And I almost feel like a sense of guilt, which I know shouldn't be there. And people tell me that, but it's there, and it's hard, but then it all goes away and makes it so much better when I share my feelings with those people, and they just tell me, don't feel that. What you're doing means so much. And it's hard, but it's also just so amazing.
So you have a big, busy August ahead of you. You're not only riding your cycle into Cleveland August 5th, you're competing in the USA Triathlon August 11th, and then the following weekend, you are going where?
Yeah, so after I arrive in Cleveland and after I compete in the triathlon, I will be headed to Dublin, Ireland to go be a speaker and attend the Periodic Paralysis Association International Conference. And I'm so excited to go there and to speak to all of them. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, I'll be presenting them with the funds, the donations that I've raised through my GoFundMe campaign to go to their cause for research and for advocacy. So I'm so excited. It's going to be great.
Wonderful. So Emily, I'm going to circle back to you. What is Ride for Rare Diseases, or R4RD, meant to you?
I'm a lot of things, and it's taken me a long time to sort out my emotions about it. You know, I'm proud of Gabriel for doing it, and it's something that, you know, you always hope that your kids will use the skills and, you know, that they have for the good of others. And so I'm really proud of what he's doing. It's also a little scary for me, to tell you the truth. Like, I'm scared that even though he has medication, and, you know, this is the part that makes me cry, that what happened to him could happen to, what happened to me could happen to him, you know, that he's doing great now, but what if he starts to have more problems in the future? And I have to just have hope that also I had a terrible time in the past and I had to quit a lot of things, but now I'm doing so much better. And so, you know, while I'm scared and it's part of me doesn't want him to get his hopes up about being able to compete in the triathlon and ride for rare diseases. Like, at the beginning of the ride, I was scared that, you know, he would be able to finish biking across the country. I'm also really hopeful, right? So there's the fear and then there's the hope, and it's all mixed up into one, that things are only going to keep getting better, not just for him, but for everybody else that he's biking for. So there's the pride, there's the fear, there's the hope, and there's, you know, maybe even bigger than those things, there's also, I'm really inspired by, I feel like pushed even by my own kid, and I guess that's what that's what kids are supposed to do to us, is push us, you know, and I feel now compelled to tell my story in a way that I didn't feel compelled to do before, in hopes that it will help others. So I feel thankful for him too. Yeah. It means lots and lots and lots of things that I don't even think I've had time to sort out yet.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Emily. So on that note, just want to thank both Emily and Gabe Low for just their time, letting Strongbridge be a part of the journey, letting us be a part of Ride for Rare Diseases, and really the advocacy communities, PPA and PPI. Thank you for letting us be partners to you all. It means everything to us. For more information on Ride for Rare Diseases, please visit www.rideforrarediseases.com or www.r4rd.com. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you, Vanita.
Thanks.
And that will conclude our event. Thank you.